to know how little they had. So he uses an interesting phrase here. First of all, he says what is translated here, the word deep. That is actually two words, kata, which is a preposition, bathus. Kata, bathus. In the Greek, it means according to the depth. According to the depth. Or, to put it another way, extremely deep. We would say it, the pits. Rock bottom. You can't get any deeper than kata bathus. Down according to the depths. The reference is to extreme poverty. In fact, the word poverty here, tokeia, is a word that literally expresses the most difficult kind of poverty. It is used elsewhere in the Scripture, coming from a verb to mean to shrink, to cower, to cringe like a beggar in embarrassment and shame because he is destitute. It refers to a person reduced almost to nothing, to a beggar. It's not the ordinary word for poverty, penacros, which refers to someone who has very little. This is somebody who has nothing. Bare existence. It is used, for example, this word is in Luke 14:21 to refer to cripples, blind, lame, and beggars. It is used in Luke 16 to refer to the poor man Lazarus. You remember whose sores were all over his body and they were being licked by the dogs, and he was begging and asking just for a crumb to fall off the table. That's poor. That's poor. And out of their rock bottom nothing, they gave generously. How could they do that? They had Philippians 4:19 too. For my God will supply all your needs. They believed it. They also knew that Jesus had said, give and it shall be given unto you. And they knew they couldn't outgive God. And they also knew it was more blessed to give than receive. They lived by faith, not by sight. They held in their hand the promise of God. And on that promise, they could trust Him for their future. People say, I'd give more if I had more. I don't believe that. Giving is not a matter of what you have. It's a function of the heart. Devout believers don't need more. They don't wait for more. They give from their poverty like the widow Jesus saw who gave everything, 2 mites. In Luke 16:10, Jesus said it this way, he that is faithful in what is least is faithful also in much. He that is unrighteous in the least is unrighteous in the much also. It is not an issue of how much you have. That has nothing to do with it. It is an issue of the heart. If you are faithful, you are faithful. If you believe faithful, meaning if you believe God, trust God, that's enough to sustain your future, and you have no problem yielding up what God puts upon your heart to give. How much you have is not the issue. Generosity is a heart issue that gives no matter how little. So they gave. They barely had enough to live, but whatever little tiny bit extra they had, they gave. Their giving is the model for the Corinthians and for us. Giving then is motivated by the grace of God, transcends difficult circumstances, gives with joy, and has no relationship to how much you have. It's a heart issue. Number 5, giving was generous. Giving was generous. In spite of their condition, he says, their giving overflowed in the wealth of their liberality. There he is piling up those words again. Overflowed. That's literally the word used to speak of a river at flood time that overflows its banks. Something gushing, a fountain, a well, something flowing over the brim, just super abundant. Their poverty, a stated fact, and yet their giving literally overflowed. Now notice the word wealth. That's what it means, riches. It's translated riches a number of times in Ephesians, also in Philippians and Colossians. They were rich, but it doesn't say they were rich in money, doesn't say they were rich in houses, doesn't say they were rich in possessions. It says they were rich in liberality. That's an attitude. That's a heart attitude. Their riches had to do with their hearts. That's a marvelous word, by the way. I'll take a minute just to explain it to you. Because in the English, you don't really get the picture of this word. It probably would be better translated generosity. Generosity. But liberality is a good synonym for generosity. It's a word that means the opposite of duplicity, or the opposite of being double-minded. It's a word that is translated in the Bible, liberality, generosity, and even sincerity. But it has the idea of single-mindedness rather than double-mindedness. And that is a wonderful way to see what generosity is. Because generosity is this. Generosity is the attitude that triumphs over duplicity. Duplicity says, well, I certainly understand your need, but I've got to take care of me too. I would certainly love to be able to meet your need, but I've got needs. That's duplicity. That's where I'm double-minded. I'm concerned about me and I'm concerned about you and I'm sort of paralyzed in this deal here and I'll be glad to give a little over there and keep a little over here and that kind of thing, but not the Macedonians. They were literally rich with single-mindedness. That is the state of the devout Christian who has absolutely no regard for self. The duplicity is gone. The battle over a little for you and a little for me has ended, and you're the only one to be concerned about. It's Philippians chapter 2. It's humbling yourself, considering others better than yourself, being more concerned with the things of others than your own things. They were rich in that. They were not rich in money, not rich in possessions. They were rich in single-minded, selfless, humble devotion to others and to God. Their generosity came from having a single purpose to put others first, to put the purposes of God first, the purposes of the Apostle Paul, the messenger of God. And it wasn't the amount that was so rich, it was just the richness of their hearts. And that's what God evaluates. That's why Jesus said the woman who gave the 2 little tiny copper coins, the 2 mites, gave more than everybody else, because the heart had no duplicity. Paul wants the Corinthians, who were likely more wealthy than the Macedonians, to be rich in their unselfish, single-minded generosity. And where there is a generous heart, the amount doesn't matter to God. He just wants that heart of generosity. So these precious Macedonians, though they had very little, gave. They gave because it was motivated by the grace of God in their lives. It transcended their difficult circumstances. They gave with joy. Their giving was not at all hindered by their poverty, and their giving reflected the magnanimity, the liberality, and the generosity of their